Someone would walk into a room and say, wow, this room feels intentional. It feels friendly. It feels exciting. It feels fun. It feels faith-filled. Yes, you have just described our culture.
Welcome to the Next Level Leadership Drip, where we aim to fill your leadership cup one episode at a time. Welcome back. My name is Pastor Ashley, and I am joined by my co-host, Pastor Charles, and today we are talking about culture.
Yes, I love the subject of culture because culture reminds me of chicken. And yes, I know what you're thinking right now. Why does he keep bringing chicken into Leadership Drip? I don't know, other than it's amazing, right? So here's one of the things I was thinking about. It's really funny. I remember a little while back, there was the whole ad campaign about who has the best chicken sandwich, so on and so forth. And, as though it was all about the taste. And taste matters.
Sure.
Taste matters, right? I mean, I don't want chicken that tastes like fish, right? I want chicken that tastes like chicken, especially if it's fried chicken. Come on, somebody. But here's the deal. There are a couple of different chicken franchises in many different cities and states like we have here. There's one where you pull up to the drive-thru and you feel like, wow, them serving me is a pleasure for them. And there's another chicken franchise where it feels like I'm doing you a favor by serving you in this drive-thru. That is the description of a culture difference. Pretty similar chicken, okay? They both have really good biscuits, I will admit, but the culture is so incredibly different because of how you feel as a customer. That is culture.
And hey, leaders, if you're just tuning in, we are actually in episode 5, and we have been on a journey this entire season. We've been talking about how leadership is a journey and using this metaphorical analogy of climbing a mountain and how we need a clear vision. Vision is the mountain we're climbing. Evaluation gives us an account to where we are on the mountain. Objectives and key results kind of is the map that leads us from where we are to where we're going. And then we talked about the 3 C's of engagement. And think of that like the fuel that keeps us forward. Well, today we want to talk about how culture also plays a part in shaping our journey. I like to think of culture like the vibe of the hike, okay?
Vibe.
It's a vibe. So as we start our conversation, can you help us define what culture even is?
Yeah, absolutely. I love the idea of culture. It's the culture really, if someone is on the outside and they're describing what they feel, they would describe who we are and how we behave. They would describe what we believe and what overall we feel, and what someone feels when they walk into a room, for example, at Next Level Church would very much the words that would be used to describe our culture. Someone would walk into a room and say, wow, this room feels intentional. It feels friendly. It feels exciting. It feels fun. It feels faith-filled. Yes, you have just described our culture. And the journey of leadership is not just about getting things done, but it's about how we get the things done. We want people to enjoy the journey. We want them to enjoy, how they're serving and who they serve with. And all of that has to do with culture. And the reality is many of us are going to have a lot of hardships as leaders. We're going to have obstacles and setbacks. We're going to have conflict. We're going to have transitions on and off of our teams. And how we operate as a team together, how we're journeying together in this journey, that matters. I want to be journeying with people who are trusting and who are loving and who are kind and who believe like I believe. And a lot of that really describes culture.
Yeah, I think about it biblically, about how, there's these 2 different parallels. One, I think about Moses and his journey to leading the Israelites to the promised land.
Yeah.
And I mean, to be a part of that team, you just escaped from Egypt. God literally parted the seas, and yet the team that he was on the other side of that was full of grumbling and complaining, and they just wanted to go back to Egypt. I don't want to be a part of that team. But then you also think about, you just mentioned obstacles, and I think about, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and how they literally walked through literal fire together.
Yes.
And they encountered hardship, but they band together through faith in the Lord, as Jesus as their foundation. that is the tangibility of culture. Which
Yes.
team do you want to be a part of? Do you want to be a part of the grumbling Israelites, or do you want to be a part of people that will walk through literal fire with you?
Wow, I love that. And we've heard culture eats strategy for breakfast. You may have heard a phrase like that, and it's just this idea that yes, we can have a great strategy, we can have a great playbook, but if we have a great culture, it can take even a moderately okay strategy to a whole nother level.
So I recently had the opportunity to be a part of Christ Fellowship Conference, and while I was there, I attended one of the breakouts about culture, and they used 3 simple words: define, shape, and sustain. So how do we leverage culture in our leadership journey? We have to define it, we have to shape it, and we have to sustain it. And so we're going to start by talking about defining the culture. And let me just pause right here and say, can I just honor our lead pastors?
Yep.
In fact, you probably heard a portion of this story in Excel Leadership about how when they first moved here to plant Next Level Church, it's easy as leaders to know everything that you don't want to be. We have experiences and we know, okay, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. But it takes intentionality to actually define what we do want to be and who we are going to be and how we're going to behave. And so I just am so thankful that we're a part of a team, a church that is rich in culture. I mean, you could ask anyone. And in fact, here in a moment, you're probably going to start repeating after me. What is our vision? We exist to lead people to become fully engaged followers of Jesus. This clearly defines why we exist. All roads lead here. So why does kids ministry matter? Because we're leading people to become fully engaged followers of Jesus.
Right.
Why does the experience team matter? Because that cup of coffee is going to make someone feel like they belong as a part of this family. It's going to tear down their walls so they can experience Jesus from our worship teams. It clearly defines why we exist. Or I think about our core values, where we clearly define how we actually behave as followers of Jesus, or even how we disciple people. You interact with someone in the foyer and you realize, oh, to become more fully engaged, they actually need to join a group, or they haven't been a part of empowerment track, and we need to get them an empowerment track so they can find purpose and begin to use their gifts to serve others with the love of Jesus. Or maybe they're stuck in their relationship with God and we need to get them a soap guide. These give us clear ways to define the culture, or even our leadership behavioral values. This is what's outlined in Excel Leadership. This is how we behave as leaders. We are so rich in culture.
Yes, we are, so true. And yeah, I think about our serve team family. We have things like cultural pillars, and we remind ourselves in those cultural pillars that we are family, that everyone has a next step. We have ministry specific pillars, right? I think about our next generation ministries constantly being reminded that we partner with parents. It is so easy to forget something like that, but yet we have a clear, defined culture. Even our students. Have you noticed the students on a Sunday?
Yes.
I love it. I love looking across and seeing students on the first or second or third row, and they've got their notes out. Why? Because part of their house rules.
Note takers.
We're note takers, right? This is culture.
And each of these actually give us a dictionary, if you will, to reference, or a playbook that we can refer to that clearly defines who we are and how we're going to behave. So the good news is, leaders, we don't have to define the culture. The culture has actually already been defined. But here's the key thing that we have to realize. Culture is either defined by design or by default. Another word to say it is culture is either defined by what we create, but it's also defined by what we allow. Healthy cultures are intentional. They don't just happen by accident, which actually leads us to the second word that I talked about, which is shape.
We've got to shape it. We absolutely do. If culture is defined by what we create and what we allow, then this is how we continue to create, so to speak, culture. And 2 primary ways that we can shape culture is, 1, we model it, and then we teach it. And when we talk about modeling culture, here's my favorite example. If you want to understand the culture of worship in our house, look for our lead pastors whenever they are either on the platform, or if you happen to be in a room where they are, maybe it's a leaders rally or something, watch them worship. You'll see that's our culture, because they're modeling it. They believe in the culture of faith, so they're modeling it. And so we, as leaders, we have to make sure that we are embodying the culture that we seek to create. But then in addition to modeling it, we can teach it. And not just once, but every single opportunity. And when you think about it, it's not enough that we just expose people to our culture in onboarding. How many of us remember what happened in our onboarding
Right.
experience, right? How long ago was that? I mean, it may have been just 3 months ago, and we might forget, like, what
Right. A
was
lot of
that? What
life
are we
has
supposed to
happened
do?
in
Like,
those 3 months.
what are we engaging again, right? And so we've got to talk about it more beyond onboarding in our huddles on the spot. Hey, great. I love the way you did that. This is how we partner with parents. This is how we see, connect, and leave people with hope. This is how, right? This is how we lead people to become fully engaged followers of Jesus. That's on the spot during communications throughout the week. And then certainly one of my favorite ways to reteach culture is to celebrate people that are doing it, to catch people doing the right thing. And here's a challenge. Here's the double-edged sword, so to speak, of culture, is that everyone on our team contributes to the culture. And so this is a part of why it's so important that as leaders we fight for health and we fight for unity, because we've got to be really aware everyone is influencing our culture, either positively or negatively, if we allow it, if we let it happen. And that leads to our final word, which is sustain.
Yeah, it's what you talked about. It's not enough to just teach it once, but at every opportunity that we can. In fact, I've heard when you think that you've talked about it enough, talk about it more.
That's right.
Because vision leaks and culture drifts. Once again, if culture is what we create and what we allow, then I would say this component is how we fight against that natural drift. We have to be willing and even able to recognize when something doesn't feel right and step in to correct it. So if this is the serve team culture, maybe on a Sunday we realize that we've started to draw inward and we're actually not talking to the new person, we're talking to the people on our team. Or maybe our serve team culture is just lacking outside of Sundays. We love hanging out with each other and we feel like we're a family on mission, but we're kind of losing the mission component. And we're realizing that we actually need to increase the communication throughout the week. We need to challenge our teams to respond to the group communication or to respond to our phone calls or our text messages, because we actually want to get to know and love and challenge them outside of a Sunday. Or honestly, maybe there's just member to member conflict and we've allowed the little squabbles and the little foxes to start to take a bigger root. And we've overlooked it, thinking that they could either work it out themselves or maybe we think that someone else will take care of it. And we actually need to start addressing it because it's creating opportunities for gossip and for bitterness. And we need to slow down and address it. Or maybe it's just individual. Maybe it isn't the culture of an entire team just yet, but maybe a specific individual is running late or they're unprepared, or maybe they're just making inappropriate comments that maybe needs to address. We need to be able to slow down and have the confidence to address those things and to sustain the culture. It's about overcoming the temptation to believe that everyone sees it or that someone else will address it. I think honestly, that's where I'll pause and just slow down and really breathe into that for a moment. I think we as leaders can fall back on the assumption that if we see it, then certainly someone else sees it. That if we see it as the coach, then certainly our staff lead sees it.
Right.
And so they can have the conversation. They can embrace the discomfort. But I just have this adage of see something, say something. There are moments that the Holy Spirit will reveal things to us that hasn't been revealed. And you have to ask yourself as a leader, is this a moment to pray for them and to intercede? Or is this a moment to step in and to have the uncomfortable conversation? And when someone misses the mark, it's not about just addressing them to get them back on track. This isn't about rigor. It's about approaching them with grace,
Yes.
but also with the love enough to speak the truth and to say it in love.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And you know what? A practical way of starting that is, hey, I've noticed. Hey, I love and appreciate you being here, you showing up to serve. I've noticed. And that's when we get the opportunity to then describe this is the culture that we're aspiring to. And here's the gap. Here's where I think you can get to. Come on, leaders, imagine your team showing up early, excited, filled with expectation. Imagine your team high-fiving and building energy without you even stepping into the huddle. Imagine your team not only just serving people in the auditorium, but walking people to the connections area. Imagine your team not just serving coffee, but imagine your team making incredible connections and walking people in and making warm handoffs. Imagine your team having so much stinking fun together. Imagine your team seeing one another truly as brothers and sisters and going beyond just the transaction, maybe of the serving experience, but actually slowing down and praying for people and sharing win after win after win. What am I describing? I'm describing a team that has incredible culture. That is the power of culture. So here's the question. How's the culture on the team that I lead? How's the culture in the group that I'm a part of? Is the culture a culture of gossip, or is the culture a culture where everyone is truly being better together? And where are we, or where is our team maybe lacking clarity in what that culture should look like? And where do we need to get creative? And how can we drip the culture? How can we sustain that culture and shape that culture? And what are the conversations maybe that we've been avoiding that we need to step into this week? Why? Because culture matters, not just about where we're going, whether or not we know we're tracking towards that, not just about getting to that destination, but how we get there truly matters.
So, leaders, the question is, are you having fun? Because we want you to enjoy the journey, and we want you to enjoy the journey with us next week as we talk about rest stops.